I was a 33-year-old woman named Laura Miles. I worked as a student advisor in a small town in Minnesota, had been married for 9 years, and lived what most people would call a steady life. My husband, Evan Miles, worked in tech from home and was kind, thoughtful and a bit quiet, maybe too quiet sometimes. We didn't argue. We didn't have drama, but that's not always a good thing. Over time, the silence between us grew heavier than words. We ate dinner together, watched the occasional show, and then went to bed facing opposite sides. There was no emotional closeness, no spark, just routine. Evan noticed it too, though he rarely said anything directly. I think we both just assumed that's how long marriages end up feeling. Then one evening, Evan did something I never expected. I had just finished folding laundry when he sat beside me on the couch with a seriousness in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Laura, I've been thinking," he started. "About what?" I asked. He took a slow breath and looked right at me. "About us. About how things feel between us. I know you're not happy. I know I haven't connected with you the way I used to." I was quiet for a moment. It was the first completely honest thing he had said in a long time. "You're right," I said softly. "It's not working and I don't know how to fix it." What he said next felt like both a shock and a strange kind of relief. "I want to try something," he said. "Something a little different." I frowned. "Different how?" He hesitated. "I've been reading about how some couples try open conversations, even arranged emotional experiences to help rebuild connection." I blinked. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Evan looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "I want you to talk to someone just once. Someone I choose. I'll be there. Not in a strange way. I just want to understand what you need. I think it might help us see each other again." At first I laughed. Then I cried. It sounded like the most unusual and confusing idea I had ever heard. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the curiosity, and that scared me. A week passed. I thought he would drop the idea, but one evening, he handed me a small piece of paper with a name and a time on it. "His name is Daniel. I've talked to him. He's respectful. He understands the boundaries." I didn't know whether to argue or walk away, but something inside me, a mix of frustration, sadness, and maybe deep down a bit of hope, led me to that meeting. The night came. Daniel was a calm, friendly man in his late 30s with warm eyes and a gentle tone. He greeted me politely, and we sat in a rented cabin where Evan sat quietly in the corner, a glass of water in his hand, looking almost more nervous than I was. There were no dramatic moments. Nothing intense, just conversation, understanding, and emotion. Daniel asked me how I had been feeling. I told him things I hadn't said even to my closest friends. I cried when he asked me what I missed about my younger self. I laughed when he talked about how confusing life can be. And somehow, in the softest, safest way, I felt noticed for the first time in years. At one point, Daniel reached out and lightly held my hand for comfort. That was all. But something inside me broke open. Evan saw it. He nodded slowly, understanding something neither of us had ever said out loud. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about release. After that evening, things shifted. Evan and I barely talked on the way home. But once we stepped inside, he turned to me and said, "Thank you for trusting me, for trusting us. I didn't realize how much you were carrying." I nodded. I didn't realize it either. Over the next few weeks, Evan and I talked more, really talked, about our childhoods, our fears, and how lonely we had both felt. The walls finally started to fall. Not because of what happened with Daniel, but because we had finally broken the silence. Months later, Evan and I began couples counseling. We weren't trying to repair something broken. We were building something new, stronger and more honest. And Daniel? We never met again. That moment was never meant to last. It was just a mirror held up to a part of myself I had ignored for far too long. So yes, the title might sound surprising, but the truth is the night I spent speaking with the man Evan chose wasn't about disloyalty. It was about rediscovering honesty, compassion, and understanding in the most unexpected way. Sometimes love doesn't look like it does in movies. Sometimes it's complicated and painful, but it can still be real. And if you're wondering whether Evan and I are still together, yes. We are closer than ever, because we finally stopped pretending and started being truthful, even when it hurt.